I wish I knew how to quit you.
Then why don't you?
This is Codependent Content, a podcast where my partner and I discuss the TV shows, movies, and video games in which we've formed an unhealthy relationship. My name is Mattias, and my co-host is Shannon Riley. Join us each week as we try to make sense of the media we continually give our hearts against our better judgment, and commiserate with us as we struggle and fail to let go of the characters, stories, and worlds that we are entangled with. Because just when we think we're done with content, it draws us back in. Welcome, Shannon, to our final episode of The Last of Us Season 1. This is hopefully not the last episode of our podcast. But
it's The Last of Us.
For all we know, that's the only reason people are here and listening to us. So we'll see.
I get it.
Shannon, did you watch the Oscars last night?
I did watch the Oscars last night.
It was a trick question. I already knew the answer to that.
Mattias, did you watch the Oscars with?
Yeah, I was with you, Shannon. Do you not remember? What did you think of the Oscars? Did you have a fun time?
You know, I had a great time, mostly because I'm obsessed with Everything Everywhere All at Once. And also I played a drinking game that had me giggling like 30 minutes in. So
great. Relatively easy show. No controversy as far as I could tell. Though I guess some people are on film Twitter don't like the Daniels. I don't know. It's
fuck whoever said that.
Relatively uncontroversial and well liked, I think. It was a good old fashioned Oscars that we love to see.
With no violence and just some cocaine bears.
And they just kept Jimmy did what they said they were going to do, just keep the show moving
just
forward. And honestly, it was
Yep.
probably still 4 hours. I don't remember.
It was very long.
We watched the Oscars before watching The Last of Us. So it was a relatively long night.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
It was good.
It was a night of crying because I did a lot of crying.
Yeah.
I think I did, no, spoiler alert, I think I actually did more crying during the Oscars than I did during The Last of Us.
Well, to be fair, the Oscars was like 5 times longer than...
What did I say last night? I never believed in my dreams more than when Key pointed at me through the screen and said, believe in your dreams. And I said, you know what? I think I will today. I think tonight I am believing in my dreams. Okay. We're ready. Let's get to some housekeeping.
All right.
A little bit. So results of our polls and our multiple questions, anywhere I could put it, seems to be consensus that Yellow Jackets
Fuck yes.
is a 2
Good
thumbs
choice.
up. Everyone wants us to watch Yellow Jackets. No other shows really kind of like came ahead or in terms of like what else people wanted us to watch. I think on Spotify, when I put an option to just watch something else, that some people, that was clearly a second place. So, and then a lot of people were commenting on Barry. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to watch Yellow Jackets for sure, which we already said we're going to do. And then we'll probably do an audio of Barry. Maybe video if we feel like it, but maybe just like a recap of Barry. I don't know, but it seems like a lot of people want us to talk about that.
Okay.
And that might be fun because it is the final season of Barry and it has been a very good show the past 3 seasons. So I am really excited for it to come back.
Yeah.
Who knows what we'll be able to talk about, but I think that'll be really
We'll
good.
find
So
something,
Yellow
I'm sure.
Jackets for sure. And so stay tuned. We're going to have Yellow Jackets. In the meantime, we're going to have a week before Yellow Jackets starts. And I think we decided in honor of the Oscars and Everything Everywhere All at Once getting their Best Picture win, we're going to do a rewatch of Everything Everywhere All at Once because we were not podcasting when we first watched it. And we would like to talk about it.
And I would like to rewatch it and cry because that also makes me cry. And I love to watch things that make me cry. So
yeah, it's a little revisiting, if you were. So I think we're excited for that. So that'll be next week. So Last of Us, unfortunately, is ending this week. So sad. But next week, we'll come back at you with a movie. And then we'll move on to Yellow Jackets.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully everyone's excited for that. And yeah. Anything else about last week or feedback, anything that you can think of that we got or?
Some general feedback. I do just want to, for the pod, take note of Bella Ramsey's preferred pronouns. I know that they go by all pronouns, and oftentimes in interviews, she will go by she, especially in reference to the fact that she's playing Ellie. So if I'm upsetting anyone by consistently referring to her as she, I just want to let you all know we did the homework, but we are trying to be mindful of the fact that they go by they, them. And I believe I even saw a couple he, hims thrown into the mix for Miss Bella, but I think her preferred are either she, her, or they, them. Just for clarity across the board here.
Most of the time when we're talking about Bella, we're talking about Ellie. So oftentimes we'll kind of switch back and forth. And so we will kind of get mixed up there.
Yeah.
So we're trying our best
I'm
here.
trying so hard. I promise. I promise.
Sorry about that, but hopefully everyone is understanding. For those who are new to this podcast, we have both watched and played all of The Last of Us, including part 1 and part 2. I've played through it twice. She's on her second playthrough of The Last of Us part 2. And so we are very familiar with the games. That said, we are going to try not to spoil anything that's upcoming, which at this point, the rest of it is just the sequel. So anything from season 2, anything from Last of Us part 2 will not be spoiled, though I think we will talk about later on in the episode what we anticipate for the next season.
Yeah.
Though that said, if you have not seen any of the first season or the finale, why are you here?
We love you, but get the fuck out of here.
The spoilers alert, go binge.
Yeah. Go watch and come back.
Go cry all at once. Do it all 9 episodes, and hurt yourself very badly, and then come back and listen to this.
Yeah.
Because we're going to spoil everything up into episode 9.
Yes.
But again, we're going to try and keep anything upcoming, anything that would happen in the next game or the next seasons out of our first part of the discussion. Yeah?
Got it.
So, that said, welcome. And Shannon, why don't you give us a little overview, some general thoughts about what you thought about this episode?
Some general thoughts. Similar to last week, I was casually underwhelmed, but as you know, Mattias, we watched this twice, and I liked it a lot better the second watch through. I can't articulate why, but I really enjoyed it the second time around. I don't know. I think when a show is as powerful as this one and you have characters that you've just fallen in love with, there comes a time where the bar is just kind of set so high that it's like, oh, I probably need to pump the brakes in my own imagination a little bit. So this episode was good. I got moments that I wanted. I got moments I didn't know I needed, i.e. meeting Anna. And yeah, I'm generally kind of hurt all around and really excited to see what happens in the next season. What about you?
No, for sure. I think we've been saying it over and over again, this 45-minute episode coming up, like why is it 45 minutes? We're getting such good content from the show. I can't believe they're going to cram so much into like this last episode. And to that extent, I still feel the same way. I feel like there are some missed opportunities that could have happened. Like it didn't need to be 45 minutes. That said, it's everything that you wanted from a Last of Us show, I think, particularly. So I was generally satisfied by the end. Yeah. Even if I wish more opportunities were taken. So yeah, I did cry more during the Oscars than during last night's episode. There's a part of it where like we've already known what's happening. The emotions, the performances still impact you, but if you already know what's kind of coming, right, it doesn't maybe hit as hard as it did before. I don't think that's always an excuse for me. If something's like impactful, if the performances are there and the writing's there and that journey is there, then it will be still as impactful as it was before. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me here in certain contexts. That said, the fact that this is being out there for people who have never gotten to experience this story on the video game, just still so amazing. The performances are there. So I think they did everything that they needed to do despite the missed opportunities. But I think we'll get to that. So, why don't we, I think a little bit higher on it than I guess last week. Than we were last
absolutely.
week.
Yeah.
We're gonna try not to be as negative as we were last.
So aggressive
week.
last
It's really
week.
hard. So yeah, let's just jump in it. So we start episode 9 with we haven't had a cold open in a while, and we're finally getting a cold open on our final episode. We love a cold open
Love a good
on an
cold
HBO
open.
show, and this one brings us all the way back to something we've never seen before
Mm-hmm.
in the games. This has been talked about. This has been rumored. They'd wanted to do different versions of this. Creators talked about doing like a live action short.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about doing a little DLC game. There was a comic idea. There was an Easter egg in a game. It was a whole lot of stuff, but we've never gotten to see the story of Anna,
Right.
which is Ellie's mom.
Ellie's mom.
And apparently the origin and the answer to how and why she is immune,
Mm-hmm.
or at least not able to be affected by the infected in this world. We should say, for those who are unaware, though I'm sure anyone who is a fan of Last of Us will tell you, Anna is being played by Ashley Johnson, who was the original actress who did the performance capture and voice acting for Ellie in the video games.
Which is the first thing, as soon as you hear her running through the forest, I literally turned to Mattias on the couch and I was like, that's Ellie. And he went, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her voice sounds pretty similar.
It's Ellie.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's great. It's a great full circle moment
Mm-hmm.
that I think makes this adaptation like so good, in the sense that we don't often get these chances in media. You know, a lot of times when we were adapting things, people don't normally reprise their roles or anything like that.
Right.
Obviously, she can't reprise her role because she wasn't 14 when she did
Right.
it originally, and she's not 14
She's not
now.
14 now.
She's nowhere near close to it.
Right.
But to be able to say, well, let's give you something that is just as significant, but that still connects you to that character in
Yeah.
a different way. That's what more could you want as like a fan,
Yeah.
you know, of the game and the show and these characters. I think so lovely, like an amazing thing. That said, what did you think of the opening in general, and like to see this origin for the first time?
I cried. I really like that they gave me that little bit of information of just, you know, here's the logic behind why Ellie is immune. Ashley Johnson is super special, and so is I'm the Worst. Who plays Marlene? What's her name?
I don't remember.
Yeah, fuck me.
Meryl Dan.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just two really lovely actors, and watching them in this new same world that they've already been a part of, like bring these characters to life, was really fun for me. Super painful to hear your best friend like beg you to kill them. That was really sad for me to come in and we see Anna has her switchblade pressed to her throat because she knows like if she even shows a sign of turning, she's gonna kill herself. And then Marlene's there, she feels safe, like Ellie has a protector, and then she's just like asking her best friend to kill her. I feel like what a dark place to go, both as Anna and Marlene.
Mm-hmm.
Just wild. What did you think?
So at first going into this, I thought I was not going to enjoy it because this is one of those things where I guess like Han Solo's pistol in Solo, or his name, right? Or let's think of, or how Indiana Jones got his hat. I mean, there's certain things that we like to see in an origin story, and then some things that don't need to be explained. And to me, I always thought, why is she immune? To me, doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, that could have been to some people like a plot hole or like a something inconsistency in the writing. Like, how does this physically possible? Like, you got to explain these things. I think the more you start to explain things, you're just getting away from the story.
Sure.
You know? So I was going into this thinking, I'm not gonna like this. I don't need to know why she's immune. And we called it last week. We saw like 2 shots. I was like, oh, I know what's going on here. And
I feel like that also ties back to your dislike of the cold open of the very first episode, where they explain like cordyceps as a fungus 60 years before it happens, and you were like, this is information I didn't need.
Yeah.
But I think in context, like we were saying before, of the show, I think it really works. And because it doesn't feel superfluous, we did bring Ashley Johnson in. We kind of made it all come full circle. We also didn't spend too much time like grinding on it, I think it really worked. But continue.
No, for sure. That said, I really, really enjoyed this opening. I thought Ashley did such a tremendous job. I'm super excited that I found out later, or we found out that they used real babies.
Oh yeah, twins.
I was like, I think the first time I'm like, tell me that's a real baby, and then I'm like, I'm not sure. Like, did they? Because CGI has gotten pretty good, and our effects have gotten pretty good. And typically, what they do, newborns are really hard to work with.
I was thinking that
if you're not understanding, and this was clearly like a newborn. This wasn't, or maybe a few weeks old,
fresh baby.
This wasn't, because typically they'll get someone that's like a few months or a few, like maybe a year, to play a newborn. A lot of times, this had to be a newborn, and with SAG rules, the reason they had to have twins, there was a boy and a girl on this set. They have to have twins because they're only allowed to work, quote unquote, for like an hour at most.
Yeah.
So like that's really hard to do. If for newborns, I think it might even be like a little bit less than that or something. Like whatever it is, that's already hard enough to do. So they usually use like little dummies, these rubber dummies, or they'll use, like older kids, or they'll just CGI it, a la the infamous Twilight CGI baby.
No.
I think. No. Luckily, they used a real baby, and I'm so excited. So the second time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, that little thing. So like now
is that
I'm
the girl
just
twin
like,
or the boy twin?
it doesn't even matter. Now I'm just like, oh, this little, like, protected at all costs kind of, my emotions are like there because I know like this is a real baby. There's something about using something real, and we get to it later too when they use a real giraffe,
which also we'll get to that.
But that
giraffe looked fake.
These things matter because I can connect to it, and did a lot to see Ashley connect to it, and then for me to like therefore connect to it, and so very simple opening. I imagine the original short story was longer and more involved. Again, I feel like if you're going to do it, like, why not do more than this? But really interesting to show this. Did we need to know the origin? No, but I did love getting to see Ashley Johnson and to see her perform and to get these moments between her and Marlene. I do think I've written down, because I think this comes into play because we were listening to the podcast and they talk a lot about how Marlene approaches taking care of Ellie versus like how Anna was and how Joel does, and I find it really interesting that when Marlene steps in, like immediately Anna is the kind of person to say, this isn't your fault, and she says, so you're getting a lot there from that character, but also there was a clear distinction, I think, of like, I don't want to argue about anything right now because this thing means more to me than anything. Like, she has this rehearsed kind of prepared speech, and she didn't know if she was going to tell anyone this, but everything that's coming out of her mouth is don't talk because I need you to have all this information. Right. I need you to take this child, I need you to keep her safe, I need to give her this thing. This is her name. Yeah. All these kinds of things. And also, like, I don't want to fight about why you're not here. I don't need the excuse. It doesn't matter to me because this means more to me than anything. And at this point, I have no time.
Yeah.
Your fault, not your fault. I don't have time to even think about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting. And I don't know, like, we get that, and I feel like, man, what is Ellie missing? By not having gotten to grow up with this. You don't see Ellie, because when Ellie got bit, we saw how she reacted.
Right.
And just pure anger, and she didn't know what to do, and she was losing her life. And granted, Ellie was losing Riley as well, and they were both bitten. And Ellie didn't, I guess, have that thing that Anna did. Right. But the difference here, the genetics are the same, but, nurture versus nature, I don't know. I just noticed the difference with how they react to this happening. Like, where Anna almost doesn't care about it, in the sense that because it doesn't matter. Even when she sees she's get bit, she doesn't think about what's going on with her life at all. Right. She just cares about this thing that's in front of her. this tough little girl,
Just
you
a
know?
full screamer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's more important to you than, that definitely ties into a point that I'll be making much later in this discussion, but I'll just say now, like, there's something about parental love that they say, I'm not a parent, so I don't actually know yet, but they say that it's like the most pure and all-encompassing love that you can experience is the love that a parent has for their child.
Yeah.
And an interesting idea to see where it does and does not also bleed into selfishness. Because when you love something and don't want to lose it, how does that make you like act or react? So I think for Anna here, we're seeing the most pure version of like mother-child love, which is anything for you, anything over me, over my well-being, over whatever fear she had about turning and being bitten and everything she's going to lose. She doesn't get to raise her daughter. Like none of that was allowed to come through because the most important thing was like get this child to safety. And yeah, really beautiful.
I have a question. This is interesting. Also, she is giving all these instructions. Anna is giving all these instructions to Marlene. And clearly, she has they've clearly known each other for a long time. She doesn't have any, I guess, expectations that Marlene is going to take care of Ellie.
Oh, yeah. She's like, find her a home.
Find her a home in Boston, take her to Boston.
Right.
She knows Marlene's not going to take care of
Marlene's
this
not
kid,
doing this shit.
which is really interesting because we do see how Marlene kind of does take care of this kid. She doesn't want it. And I think that's okay, mostly because, and we see later on like what she values the most. I feel like it must be hard. I'm looking at this Marlene 14 years earlier, probably like not quite the leader of the Fireflies, but going to be, you know, and she's been doing this. They've been in this weird fight and battle for 14 years or maybe even 20 years.
Yeah.
Like it's been a long time. And yeah, Marlene doesn't have room to take care of a kid. So that makes sense. But also the Fireflies are her kid. She already has so many people to take care of.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes very interesting when you think about what happens later when Joel does what he does. Is she advocating for her kid? You know, is she advocating? Is the world her kid? Is the Fireflies? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
the idea that there are people that really do take up the mantle, like quote unquote, for the greater good, for the many, not the few. And when you run into people like that, paired with people who are not like that, it's like, well, I don't know. So yeah, seeing that dichotomy is very interesting because if Anna is an active part of the Fireflies with Marlene, to see how hard she probably would have pivoted if given the chance to be a mother. And what, having a child then means like, well, what does going out on like missions or whatever look like? And what does leaving quarantine zone to go do whatever look like when you have a child at home? Whereas Marlene, as we see time and time again, is able to put things like that aside and do what needs to be done for the greater good or for the greater mission, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, so I think that it's just worth noting like what these people value as we go on through this episode, because this definitely becomes an ongoing theme that they want to talk about, in terms of who's more important,
Right.
and what is important to us and what do these things matter, right?
Right.
So yeah, anything else about
That
this opening with Anna and Marlene?
No notes.
Great. So we finally catch up to what's been happening with Ellie and Joel. They do mention in the podcast it has been a month since David. In the game, we're very sure of this because it goes from winter to spring in the video game when we get here, but there's no subtitles to show us that it's spring or anything, that it's been a month or how much time has passed, but it has been a month.
Yeah.
All of this, again, if I were adapting this, I would have put this and anything up into the giraffes in the last episode.
Right.
That's just a personal choice because I feel like to take us away from David, then to give us a cold open, and then to drop us back in here when Ellie is clearly dealing with a like kind of stressful kind of post-traumatic stress kind of attack or whatever it is, kind of these thoughts that are going on through her head. It's hard for me to reorient.
Yeah.
You know? That said, performance is still great.
Yeah.
Still going good. You know, if you kind of binge this, if you didn't wait a week, it might still be fresh in your mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish they had kind of put this closer just so it would still be fresh in our mind. Like, how what's going on? Like, be in the headspace that she's in.
Right.
You know?
And then to get the reprieve of the giraffes is kind of a little gift. Yeah, sure. I get it.
But that beyond that, here we go. Opening's pretty great. We get Joel. He's a completely different person.
He's trying so hard
yeah.
to engage. It's interesting. We've all been in a situation where someone you care about is distant. They're in like some sort of dark headspace, and you're trying your best to maybe like bring out that energy a little bit. And Joel coming in with his little can of Chef Boyardee and just keeps trying to engage with her. And she's like not in the headspace to do it, but I like that Ellie also like tries to engage back, even though she's not like emotionally available.
Yeah.
I really liked something we mentioned in episodes like 1 and 2 is that so much of being in a relationship with someone in any capacity is a constant give and take and being willing to pick up what's being put down by the other person.
Yeah.
So the fact that Joel is like trying to extend energy and Ellie is doing her best to try to receive that energy, I think shows what a close bond that they have, because both of them could easily just revert into like the distance, I think.
Oh, for sure. And I think this is an interesting part of the game as well. I remember this from the game because this is how I was introduced to the game. Because before I'd ever played it, I remember watching videos about like breaking down these moments, right? And it really all comes down to this. The fact that when they're on this highway going into wherever this St. Mary's is, I can't remember even the town, but you've had these moments throughout the game where when you're walking with Ellie, a little button will pop up above her head. And if you click on it, you can have a little engagement moment, right? And throughout this entire time, Ellie, in this part of the game, she's not talking. Normally she is engaging with you, and you have to constantly
like
go up and engage and go up and engage. And sometimes she won't hear you the first time when you press that button. And sometimes like she won't respond right away. And it's a really interesting moment and a great kind of little bit mechanic to show you like something's off. Like if you've never like dealt with this as a person before or had a relationship like this where someone is in that moment, and it could be really easy to just ignore it, you know, to like forget like not pay attention to the button if you're worried about getting stuff or doing whatever. But the game constantly tries to get you back to, hey, something's up here. Like, you know, especially in the moments where like even here in the show where like he'll go off and kind of do the things he knows he's doing, and then she'll be paying attention to something else, and he's like, hey, are you with me? Like he forgets where she is, where normally she's like right ahead of him,
right? You
know, she's always forging ahead, trying to, you know, be part of the group or whatever. And like it's very, very different. Do you think it's been going on for a month?
Yeah.
The whole time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why like Joel's just trying anything. You know what I mean? And in a very kind way, being okay with the fact that she's not always able to respond to that energy. I think I don't remember exactly what he says, but she apologizes for the fact that she's been quiet today, or that she's a little more quiet than usual. And he's like, oh my God, you don't have to be sorry. Like he's not looking, he doesn't need the explanation. He doesn't need her to be sorry. He really just actually wants her to like be okay. And it's hard to see someone who's usually full of so much light and like almost annoying enthusiasm to dim like that. And I think this is hard for Joel to reckon with too, because you love this little person, you don't want them to be upset, but also when you know how big Ellie usually is, it's like you can just see the damage and the pain that's still there.
So we move along, they do some jokes, he he kind of makes a little jab at like, we're gonna blow up this thing instead of, you know, she kind of understands the lay of the land, but he'll even try to like catch her off guard, like, you know, in certain ways. And I love those little moments. But then as she's trying to get this ladder, she sees something, she runs off. We know what's coming.
We know.
In the game, it's interesting because you are playing as Joel, and Ellie just runs off on you, and anything could happen.
Right.
You know? And so it's like, what the heck is about?
God damn it, Ellie.
What is this game? I just got through the most traumatic thing as well as a player, you know? And I was like, I don't want to do, I was like, now I have to, you know? And then the most beautiful thing happens. The most unexpected, I think, for anyone is just, it's a flock. It's a giraffe.
It's a giraffe.
I don't know what a flock of giraffes is.
A flock of giraffes. Let us know. Get in the comments.
A murder of giraffes.
No. A gangle of giraffes.
I mentioned in a previous episode during the Riley and Ellie episode, when they look at the arcade, music starts playing in the score, and it's the same score that's happening here. And I think thematically ties you back to these moments, right?
Yeah.
To the Ellie that was in awe of the mall, in awe of the arcade, the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. And here's this thing in front of her, and this music's kind of playing in the background, and it's a moment that we haven't had in a long time for Ellie. Not even just because of the traumatic stuff that just happened, but even in the past 20 years, ever since she got bit, she's had little moments here and there where she just stops and enjoys the view. But this is different. This brings her something out of her that she hasn't felt in quite a while. Which is obviously like so beautiful. I find it funny that she's afraid, you know, like usually she'd be the first one up there, but now she's like, don't scare it off, Joel.
Like,
you're gonna like, what are you gonna do? Like,
Joel.
she doesn't know what to do with it. She's never seen this thing before, and it's big. And it's a real giraffe.
It's a real giraffe. It looked fake. It looks so fake. I remember watching it and being like, that looks like a fake giraffe.
It is surrounded by blue screens, so that would make sense.
That might be,
to have to input a whole CGI environment around this giraffe so they can get it to cooperate. But it worked. To see that tongue, you know, in
that tongue.
Cool. What do you have about this moment?
Well, it's a moment that while you were playing the game for me for the first time, I remember I was like trying to get a snack or like drinking water or something, and you were like, "Hey, can you pay attention to this part?" And I was like, "Oh, great, what's gonna happen here?" And I remember what it felt like to see that for the first time. You are almost kind of in Ellie's shoes because like you as a player aren't expecting it either, and it is just such an awful moment.
Yeah.
Which is super fun. But, you know, we listened to the post-show podcast, and it was interesting hearing Ashley say that the way she always felt it was like more sad than awe. And because we want Ellie to be the bright little angel baby that she is, like I don't always want to think about that with her, especially in the first game. But to hear Ashley put it that, you know, lots of things terrible have happened to this young girl, and you are now feeling the weight of that, even in the way that she responds to things that bring her awe or joy or like happiness in some capacity. So that kind of colors my opinion looking back on that scene, because like you're right, if the musical parallel is between like the arcade pre being bitten, pre like kind of probably most of her big trauma, and then this moment, it's like, yeah, it is more subdued. It is softer. It is quieter. It's not the, oh my God, this is amazing. What the fuck is this? It's very much just like, you know what's at stake, and you know the bad. So the good just hits you differently. And I think this is the first time that we're seeing that in Ellie, and it's weird now that I think about it like that.
If you haven't listened to the official podcast, they have Ashley Johnson on, they have Troy Baker, and then the two creators of this show and the video game, all breaking down these moments. I just definitely encourage people to go listen to that because it definitely highlights a lot of things that we maybe don't experience ourselves and like what was kind of going on there. And like how they all felt about it and how they interpret it differently because we do interpret things differently than what they do.
Yes.
And I love hearing what the creators like meant for that those moments. I can't remember everything now, but it's definitely I do resonate with what Craig said with recognizing that Ellie is still there. You know, the person that he's been trying to get at this entire time, he wasn't even sure if she was ever going to come back from that.
Right.
You know, and then to see her kind of come alive just for a little bit, you know, shows him that like, oh, this person that I have grown to love is actually there. And and that's great because that means I can still reach her.
Yeah.
You know, and then he tries to, that gives him permission to ask her, you know, or to tell her that like, we don't need to continue.
Right.
What do you think? Because he doesn't know, and neither does Ellie know, like what this procedure, what they're even going to do. They might just take her blood. They might just do something. They don't have the scientific know-how to really figure out like what could happen to get this cure or whatever. What do you think he's just afraid that they're going to, that they're going to get to the hospital and that no one's going to be there? Or do you think something else they're going to have to keep going on this journey? Do you think maybe she's had enough in his head? Could be all those things.
It could be a little bit of all those things. I think for Joel, I think there's a piece of him that wonders if she is afraid now and maybe doesn't not care as much is not the word I'm trying to say, but like after a traumatic event like that, it's like maybe what you want is security and safety. And we have that back in Jackson. You and I can just fuck all of the unknowns and the travel that we have left. And then whatever comes after the hospital, we can just go home. And that kind of ties back with a theme that I felt through the episode often, which is like, when does love become like selfish too? And I think there's pieces of Joel ever since we've left Jackson that we saw what he could have had. He got a little taste of what he could have. And especially now that he and Ellie are so much like on the same page, I think there's a part of him that just really aches for that he doesn't want to keep traveling and fighting and being disappointed and putting both of their lives into this unnecessary danger when they can just go home and like live together with his brother and with his not actual daughter, but like a daughter figure to him. And I think over this past month, just seeing how distraught and unreachable Ellie's been, seeing that light in her is like, hey, let me see if this lands, both for her and probably for himself.
Yeah, I think there's like a whole lot he's had to think about the past month. And part of him wanting to be a protector is the fact that like he's seen her struggled through so much. And that last winter, like it was really hard. And how much more can they handle? How much more can she handle? He's barely been able to handle everything.
Right.
You know, he almost died. And it's like he doesn't know now at this point what they're going for and what the point is. Like his whole point of originally taking Ellie has changed completely. We're at the point where originally he was doing this for a car and some guns, and then he was doing it as a promise to Tess. But then he got to Wyoming. He knows that his brother's okay. He no longer needs to get to his brother, and now he's only kind of going ahead because Ellie needs him, and she has this purpose now. But she's changing. Like she doesn't know like what's important to her. So he needs that like recognition, that reinforcement of like why. You know, I think it's more to just say like to give her the permission to say like I don't want this anymore. I do want this anymore. What do you want, Ellie? Because at this point, like I'm okay here. Yeah, I'm okay with whatever it would like. I think we've gone far enough in my eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
Joel. I don't think, you know, Joel doesn't do that. I don't think for himself. He does it all, I think, for Ellie in that moment. And I think that's a different Joel than we started with at the beginning of the season. I don't know when this change or the switch over kind of like happened for him, you know, but he's definitely decided that this is enough.
Yeah.
You know, and moving on as they continue on their journey, he's very adamant about that. Like, you know, that he's being more vulnerable. He's being more open. He's saying, listen, I gave up at the beginning of this whole thing, you know, 20 years ago. I didn't see a reason. I was ready, you know, and he all but admits that feeling never went away.
Right.
For 20 years.
Right.
Until now. And he says it wasn't time that did that. I think he's come to recognize that the people in front of him are what matters. You know, what you put yourself into. I kind of am trying to think of what the thesis and the antithesis is in this show, because Craig Mazin, he does a podcast called Script Notes, and one of his best episodes is him talking about how to write a movie, and it's his philosophy on how he approaches scripts and everything. And in it, he breaks down. He uses Finding Nemo as an example, but in it, he talks about everyone has your things. You know, your hero's journey. You're all these different, like you're all these kind of structures that you have. But for him, it's like there's a thesis, there's a antithesis, right? Your character at the beginning, your protagonist, has to embody the antithesis, which sounds weird because the thesis of your story needs to impact your character, you know? And if the thesis of this story is people matter, what we do, like the community matters, the who's in front of us in our present moment, like is worth like fighting for and things like that, then the antithesis that Joel embodied was the opposite of that before. The thing that he was coming up against before over and over again was, no, I matter, and what I want matters, and doesn't matter what anyone else wants, and it's not worth it to save other human beings, you know, even if they're close to me, you know? And I think even with Tess, he refused to get close to in that kind of sense, you know? You have a feeling that he would have done anything for Tess, but if it came down to it, if they got into a brush up and he couldn't protect her, that he would have, you know, just gone, and she would have had to suffer for that, you know, for failing or whatever, right? And maybe he would have cared about it, but like he didn't get himself close enough to like want to do anything for her, you know, to put himself in the line of fire to like save her kind of thing. I don't think, right? He let his brother go, you know, kind of stuff. And so I think that switch at some point happened, and yet here he is fully embodying the new thesis that like you matter to me, you know, and that's the thing that has healed me. That's the thing that has, you know, that I care about now, you know. I don't know. Thoughts on any of that? I
guess kind of transitioning, you know, out of that tender, thoughtful moment, we just have him straight ask for some puns. And again, I like the...
Oh, do you not want to... Hold on. Two things, if we're going to move on to the pun books. I will say that another missed opportunity was just to take more time with the looking at the drafts. I feel like one of the things for me is like playing the game. There's something that like when they game gives you the opportunity to just sit there and move the camera around, but the characters won't move and there's no dialogue, no nothing. I'm like, great, I'm going to sit here for like a good 4 minutes and just watch these giraffes, you know, because I don't know what's about to come my way. And I wish we had like a little bit more time to just like take in the moment, you know, but we don't have time. We got to move forward kind of thing. Or
especially because I don't think the moment was as impactful as it was in the game.
Yeah.
If it would have taken too long, I would have been like, okay, cute giraffe.
I love how Ellie, these entire conversations, for her, there's never a doubt of like, even if how distant she is, she's still connected to Joel. She's like, we'll find the hospital. We'll get through it. We've gotten through worse. You know, it's always we, right? And I love that. It's always kind of been like that from the beginning for her, but I think even more solidified here. It's not, you know, there may have been times even before when they were in Jackson where they're probably going to separate. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but no, they're so connected now. They've been through like so much that this is family, you know, this is very much. And he says that to a certain extent, and she believes it now wholeheartedly. She no longer sees herself as just cargo.
Yeah. I really liked when she said that they can go wherever Joel wants to go, that she would follow him anywhere.
Yeah.
That again, even through like the trauma and the bleakness of just all the bullshit she's already experienced in her very small amount of lifetime. It's like Joel is still such a North Star for her. It's like, if I can be with you, like that is my choice. My choice here is to save the world and then like be with you. And I think that's really special and indicative of Ellie too. Just like the type of person that she is. Yeah.
So you wanted to talk about puns?
I always want to talk about puns.
Sure.
I just kind of like what you were saying with the giraffes. We get like a flicker of Ellie back. We get a little flicker of Ellie back here. She's a little brighter and she's willing to engage with that. And it's nice to see, again, we saw earlier in the scene that she's trying to engage and now it seems so much less forced. And it's interesting that Joel's able to, you know, that's the lifeline he decides to throw, and Ellie's now in a mind state to kind of take it and go somewhere with it. So that was just a nice transition. And then,
well, as with most good things in The Last of Us, they can never last. As soon as our characters connect, as soon as they have their moments where
someone's happy, just
Ellie's back,
fuck them up.
We love it. This is going to be the next week and a half of their life is going to be so amazing. But nope, not at all.
Zero. She gets 1.5 puns. I'm
so mad, Shannon, that you let me finish, please.
Sorry.
I'm so mad that my dream of seeing more clickers and maybe a couple more bloaters has been dashed in this season. Yeah. Again, not a zombie show, but I wanted some zombies. I wanted a little bit. Man, I feel like, again, we're missing so much here. Like, we're rushing through. It's like, we had 15 minutes. We could have done something interesting. Just to note that in the game, after this giraffe moment, you still have to kind of get through the city to get to the hospital. And that involves going through some subways and or some tunnels, you know, and then you deal with some infected. It's kind of hard, you know, but like it's infected and you're like, oh man, one last time with the infected. You're like, here we go again, you know?
Here we go.
The first time it was super scary. The second time I was like, I'm ready for it. I loved fighting these infected. But then after you get past them, you have to go again through more subways and you get to a moment where it's just underwater, you know, these train cars and stuff, and they have to kind of get on top of like these vents or whatever. Hard stuff to plan. Don't get me wrong. This is high production value stuff. So I can see why they wouldn't do it. But at a certain point, because Ellie can't swim, y'all get stuck. And then she tries to save Joel and then Joel tries to save her. And then they both get sucked underwater through like this kind of river. And then she kind of almost drowns and he gets her out. He tries to perform CPR. And that's when this soldier shows up, the worst possible time. I'm trying to save this girl. Like, and they don't even ask questions. He's like, we're not infected, we're fine. And then they come and they knock him out. When Joel finally wakes up, he has no idea what's happened. He doesn't know if Ellie's alive. He doesn't know where he's at. He doesn't know that he just found the fireflies. Nothing. A little bit different here.
Yeah.
They just come in, they throw a flashbang, and then they knock him out.
Right.
I like the shot. I do like the, them doing the pun book and then the soldiers in the background, deep focus, and then just kind of toss the thing and you're like, oh no, turn around, guys, turn around. Joel is kind of off his guard this entire episode. He's off his game.
His guard down.
Not only is he so much more vulnerable, but he's just been the entire time, even when they go into the building that probably is crawling with infected or whatever, he's like, oh yeah, this is so interesting. He's just, before he's always like, quiet, don't make a sound or whatever. Now he's like, no, let's have a full on conversation and we'll find it really interesting. Again, like he's completely changed. He's decided like violence is not going to be his thing anyway. He's going to approach things differently. He's going to look at the different options, Unfortunately, I think Joel earlier in the season would not have allowed this to happen. I don't think this would have happened. It's just kind of unfortunate. Difference in how this worked via the game, via the show, but again, I think does kind of show a little bit of Joel's progress. Harder, a little more subtle, if you're not paying attention. They get ambushed. Not really Joel's fault, but again, the Joel that we first started this journey with would not have allowed this to happen. He would have been paying attention. He would have been all eyes everywhere, head on a swivel kind of thing. Yeah. He's sitting there, he's listening to puns, whereas he didn't have time for that before because he had to make sure that no one was gonna ambush them. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's just like Ellie's emotional state and well-being is more important to him than like the perceived threat of what might be out. Like, I think that's a really interesting thing too, that her well-being was more important to him than what he usually is, like all physical safety all the time. Like we stay alive, we do this. And it's like, well, what's the point? And I don't mean this. What's the point in staying alive when you feel the way that Ellie is feeling? And that's why all of his focus is just like, how do I engage with her and make sure that she feels like safe and connected to? And
before we move on to the hospital then, my last missed opportunity for me is that here is where I felt like we could have had 15 minutes or anything of a scene with Marlene, maybe with the doctor, maybe learning the information that she learns that she eventually passes on to Joel. Because I do think it's interesting that by the time she gets to Joel, she's made the decision and she had to make this tough decision. And she presents it in, as the creators say, this altruistic or whatever way, very logistical mindset, a very, trolley train track problem kind of thing. It doesn't matter what one person, like one person can die for the many, Right. She has made that decision because, again, her baby is the fireflies and her baby is her goal, her dream, her whatever you want to call it, right? And it matters. But she did struggle with that decision in the game. We learned through voice recordings and later on, like how this was affecting her before she even gets to Joel, and how she was like she even kind of fought for Ellie because she does know the way of this decision. And considering we opened with Anna and Marlene and this promise to protect Ellie and to keep her safe, and the fact that they don't even give us like a little bit of a scene with Marlene having to struggle with that decision herself, right, is, I think, just a missed opportunity. I don't fault the creators for just not doing it. Again, what we have gotten in this show, we've gotten so much extra, so many things. And here in this episode, it has felt like almost beat for beat from the game. It's cutscenes from the game. And part of me is like, well, if we're going to have an adaptation, you got to have something that really like justifies doing this as opposed to just watching it on YouTube or playing the video game and just getting the same old cutscenes, If it's so similar, it's basically the same. There are some slight differences, but I think for here, they've held more closely than they have in the past. And I felt like this is just why we have 45 minutes. We could have added on 10 extra minutes, maybe even 5, just like of that little thing to really tie in that theme earlier in the episode for us to see how that decision plays out.
Right.
That's, to me, just the final missed opportunity. I don't want to be too negative on the episode, but that to me is just something I want to add before we move and talk about the rest of the episode.
I like waking up with Joel because it, like, you don't have any more information than he does.
Sure.
And you're learning about it in real time. So I do kind of like that choice in that moment, but generally I could have used more Marlene and maybe a little bit more information on like what the fuck it is that they thought they were going to do with Ellie. I honestly, at this point, I decided I had this opinion 2 hours ago that this is okay. These people, these doctors,
sure,
okay, haven't medicine has not progressed since like 2003 when the world stopped. So we're working with like outdated knowledge of vaccines, where at the time, and probably still currently, I don't actually know, I'm not a scientist, like there aren't vaccines against fungal infections. So you're going to take the only subject that you have, and your first idea is like, oh, we'll kill it. We'll just cut it out and hope for the best. Like there's no other steps you take first to like see what's going on?
Shannon, I'm not a scientist, but what the idea is like, yes, the story needs to happen. So all I can say to kind of defend that is that, again, there's the fungus. Here's also something that we should mention. A lot of people get onto us for like, oh, these are infected. They're not zombies. This is not a zombie show. And people have like used a lot of knowledge that we have gained about the cordyceps now that we didn't have in 2013 when this game was created. When this game was created, when the story was created, and with the research that we had, and what the story of this show posits is that this does affect the brain. This grows in the brain, whereas what we think of the cordyceps now, and people like to say, well, the cordyceps actually grows in the muscles. It actually doesn't go near the brainstem, you know? So that's something that people want to for some reason, they keep saying that this matters because this is our new research, what we know about the cordyceps. So therefore, now that we know it doesn't affect the brain, these people might still be in there. You know, it really just affects the muscles and stuff. Doesn't matter. In this show, it affects the brain. It grows in the brain, and only really kind of in the brain. I do know when we even see them cutting people up earlier, like it's kind of growing wherever the thing was infected, but it worms its way up to the brain.
Sure.
That's the point.
Right.
Right. And the only way to extract anything from the brain is to break open the skull.
Cut it open.
And unfortunately, like if you're going to extract anything to be able to have a chance at a vaccine or to again, do whatever. This isn't science corner with Mattias, but that I think that's the idea, is that there literally is no other way because of where it grows and where these, whatever the word they use is, the antigen or the whatever the antibodies are, whatever, are in this particular part of where it's being generated because of she was born with it.
Right.
You know? So that's just to defend
I'm just
that
saying,
a little bit.
I'm just annoyed. I'm like, you don't have any other living subject. And you're like, yeah, the first thing we're going to try is just cut her fucking head open. These people are desperate times, desperate measures. But you have someone that can come in and like maybe give you a cure.
In the game,
I think it's really important that you like keep that in mind, because if you know that this is the only person you've ever met that is immune, and if everything generates from the brain and the brain stem, your first and probably most excitable option is get into there as quickly as possible so we can get to work. I'm just saying, what a wild, like, I'm not a scientist either, but death is such a quick thing to jump on, and we do it so easily with violence throughout the show. So for in this, don't roll your eyes at me. I listened to you talk for like 2 minutes. I'm not done.
Yeah, you do have to realize that for 20 years they've been studying this. in like monkeys and like whatever. Remember, these are the same.
In The Last of Us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Fireflies, they moved from their first place in Colorado where they were doing lab tests. They were seeing how the cordyceps grows. They were taking apart whatever. They were probably doing dissections to see how this thing grows
Right.
and how it's affected. They're noticing the difference because we do see x-rays in the game of Ellie's head. We do know that they took x-rays. They saw where it was growing. They saw how it was mutated differently than it was before. And the difference is in her, and she is the only one with this difference. So I don't know that it's like that big of a logic leap that you know, that the only way to do this. And honestly, in the game, it's like, what better opportunity when she's already knocked out? Again, this is a difference where they took her where she was kind of awake in the show, but in the game, like she was already knocked out. And it's like, make the decision now because we know we're going to have to make the decision later.
Right.
They have been studying it. They already know they've probably killed patients just trying to study the fungus, you know?
If they've even had human patients, do they?
I mean,
because they never reference
they're
any
all
other
human. They're all human patients. There's no other immune human patients.
Right.
But they are all human patients,
okay.
and they can bring in a live infected.
Yeah.
I imagine they've done this, you know?
Yeah.
They gathered all their materials, all the stuff that they had in the old at the university and other labs that they've had across the country and brought them to this one hospital. So it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, here's another one. Here I go. Consent. Super important, right? Marlene mentions that they knock her out, and
Shannon,
then they're like,
"This is the trolley problem. Do you want to talk? You want to just go ahead and talk about the trolley problem?"
No, but just a little bit. How interesting, like, you know, for Marlene to so boldly say, like, this is what Ellie would have wanted. She's probably right. Ellie was very focused on, you know, fulfilling her purpose, but you knocked out a 14-year-old girl and are gonna kill her without even telling her what's going on. No information. Like, she was like, we literally just knocked her out and we're prepping her for surgery. That's kind of fucked up too. That you just like assume that consent is there from I don't know.
That's
dark.
the problem of the game. That's the thing that the creators want you to wrestle with. That's the thing that is going on here with, does Joel make the right decision? We can just blow past everything that happens if you want to, but that is the entire point of this show, is like, what were the Fireflies right? Was Marlene right? Was Joel right? Who was right at the end? At the end of the day, does she deserve a decision? Does she not? You know, he's saying she deserves to decide, but is what he's doing, Marlene knows what she would decide. Is Marlene right?
Right.
She knows what she would decide and we are led to believe that because this all needs to matter to Ellie.
Right.
You know? And maybe not giving her the option. Maybe it's more humane if they're like, she's not going to feel any pain. It's already been decided. She doesn't know what's going to happen. And it's like, just end it without giving someone that, you know, like the fear or the weight. You know, like, she doesn't have anything to like wrap up in her life, you know, to kind of, you know, there's no, you know, things that she has to kind of just have close accounts or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Does it matter? Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm not taking Marlene's side, but that is what you're supposed to be dealing with here.
And how calculating of Marlene, I think, to know that if she, like, for me, I'm thinking, okay, if that was me, what would be my biggest, like, I never got to say goodbye. That would be hard to not actually get to say goodbye.
But you wouldn't know. That's the thing.
As
you
Joel,
wouldn't know. Oh,
too.
Sure. Well,
you know what I mean?
She doesn't care about Joel.
Well, that's the thing. How calculating of Marlene to have the forethought of, like, you kind of you see Joel's energy and you're just like, you know what? We're just gonna take him out of the equation, take Ellie out of the equation. We have the facts. This is what we need. This is what we need to do. And, like, here's how I'm gonna do it.
This is the thing. I think if it wasn't for the fact that it's been a year since they separated, she gave Joel this job. This is what she means when she says, I owe you. She doesn't mean I owe you a truck and guns anymore, or like a debt or whatever. Her debt is being paid by letting him go alive. Because I think if if it wasn't Joel, she would have just killed him already.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't have even let him wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the mercy that she's showing, is like, you can go and live. I don't know what you're going to do with your life, but you can go and live and forget Ellie or whatever, because we're going to get a cure and maybe we'll see each other again, maybe not, or whatever. This is a new world and whatever. And that's the most I can give you.
Yeah.
You know, that's what she means when she says, I owe you.
I agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And again, made abundantly clear also by the fact that she's like, take him to the middle of the road, give him the shit. And if he does anything stupid, put a bullet in him, because I don't give a fuck. Like,
Marlene has struggled so long, you know? Do you imagine what went on through her head when she was like, because now we know the origin story. Now we know that she was there when Ellie was born, and Anna was very adamant. I had her before I was bitten. Before. And now when she encounters Ellie in the mall and she's bitten and she sees that she hasn't turned, now you know exactly what Marlene's thinking. That one, Anna lied to me, but two, this is now you understand, like, this is a once in a million. This doesn't happen. You can't replicate this. You would have to kill someone to replicate
I was just
this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
every woman that's pregnant right before they give birth, just have them be bitten, and there's your vaccine.
That's a sacrifice.
Yeah,
that
that's
is like,
fucked up.
You know? And her best friend technically made that sacrifice already, you know? So Joel in her head can make the sacrifice. I'm making a sacrifice. Ellie's going to make the sacrifice. Like, there's so many things that have run through her head the past 20 years. All the struggles have led to like this, you know? It wasn't about saving the world. It was about bringing around a new world order. But now the Fireflies can actually save the entire world.
Yeah.
Create a vaccine, or at least an immunity to this thing, you know? It's hard. I can understand Marlene's side and why she would be so cut off emotionally to not care about what Joel wants and what Ellie wants, what anyone wants, even what she wants and what she cares about, just because, like, this, there is no replicating this. This is not even 1 in a million. I don't know what the odds are. This is 1 in 7 billion, I guess, in terms of humanity. You know what I'm saying? This is, if you had a chance, Shannon, what would you do? Would you have killed Joel?
I was gonna just ask you that, and the answer is no, I would not have. I would have pulled a Joel. I would have taken Ellie out of there. I would not. No. Fuck these people.
That doctor tells you have one chance. It's been 20 years.
They don't know shit. No, okay.
This is how it's tough. It's a tough question. You're not used to it. That's the thing. When we have grown up with Ellie, we're on Joel's side because Joel, this is the thing. This is the whole point. We are so close to Ellie. Marlene is not.
And that's what I'm imagining. I'm imagining, like, if I am in Joel's perspective, if I am traveling with you and you have the cure and they're like, cool, we knocked him out, like, we're just gonna cut into his skull, I'd be like, the fuck you are. Yeah. You absolutely not. And I think there's something that kicks in. Someone somewhere has probably said, like, love overrides logic completely. Like, I don't care. I don't care, because that means that you are gone for something that maybe could help people, maybe couldn't. I would argue 50-50. We don't fucking know. They've been doing tests. We don't know what they've been doing. All I know is you're going to die for something that might not even work. Fuck that.
I think, at least in the context, again, not to defend it, I think it is more, you know, they do make it very clear, like, this is a certainty. We can create a vaccine.
Do they?
I think so. They can create a cure. I don't think Marlene would have made that decision. Even any military mind would have said, run the test again.
Doesn't she say there's a chance for a cure?
I need to be 100%. I think that there is a good chance that they can make a cure from Ellie's thing. Okay. Whatever you call it. Not to defend it or anything. Like, I think that's the thing. It's like, you would say, like, no, run it again, do the test, that kind of thing. I think any logical mind would have. I think Marlene's smart enough to know, like, she wouldn't make this decision lightly.
Right.
But there are some people, I mean, like, if there's even, what is the Batman future? If there's 1% chance that he could whatever, then we have to take that as a certainty. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, well, that is, for some people,
Yeah.
maybe this is the only chance, and that means it's 100%.
Yeah.
You know? So
it's true.
yeah.
And percentages are different depending upon what side of the equation you're looking at them from. Like, if Joel lying dead, bleeding in a basement could be like, but there might be a 1% chance that Ellie needs me, so I'm going to get my ass up and go through. That 1% is 100%. But here, it's like even 50% isn't enough. If it's not a guarantee that this person that I love is going to be okay, then I don't want any part of it. Like, humanity be damned.
I mean, again, let's take away, because we talked about consent, right? What do you think Ellie? what do you think Ellie would decide? Not even Joel, not even Marlene, not even the doctor or whatever, or what we would decide. What do you think Ellie would have decided?
I think Ellie would have decided to go through with it.
There it is. You know, if there was even a little bit of a chance, this is what she needs it all to mean
but
something.
She's 14.
We're going to get back to that. Well, before that, we get what you wanted the
Murder
whole time.
Joel!
Oh, my God.
I blew that out. I'm sorry.
Joel.
Murder Joel.
What we all wanted. Man, the first time, this was so interesting to me because I was like, they shot this weird. It's like slow motion, sad music. You know, I'm like, weird. This is like an out of body experience. And I don't like that because in the game, it's a very active experience.
Right.
You have to do it, right? I know, and I don't like this out of body experience, but I do think second time watching through, again, because we haven't gotten this, you know, because they left it out so many times. Oh man, he is on a rampage, and now we are finally seeing what we wanted this whole time. I wish it was more active, but we are finally seeing
Murder Joel.
What they've been talking about this whole time, like why he is so good at what he does. It is, at some point it feels like, as they mentioned, a little John Wicky, you know.
He's brutal though, and calculated, and I do really actually like the second time around. The first time around, the first time watching that scene, it almost takes me out of it too. Like, you almost kind of disconnect from the violence with him. Sure. And it's more just like imagery hitting you. But the second time, really being able to watch, like, they show you everything you need to know. You see headshots. You see some guy kicking and kind of begging for his life. And with the sad, like, tonal music over it, it puts you in that mindset almost that this is just this is an execution. I think maybe if it was supposed to feel like an out-of-body experience for him, then that makes sense, that it would be like kind of an out-of-body experience for us. Like, that he's reverting to something that we haven't seen, that he hasn't seen in a while, that it takes so much out of him to the sense where he just has to move forward, no thinking, no emotion, no whatever, just do it. So that kind of makes sense. It kind of works a little bit on those levels to kind of give us those kind of moments. Yeah. Are we ready for like a little bit of gun talk? This is gonna be quick. I was almost so angry because he started off with an AK-47 or an AK of some sort, right? Which are usually inaccurate guns. And unfortunately, I was really excited at this part of the game because you got to get that M4, which is an assault rifle. And like, it is very accurate, very dangerous. I'm like, I'm going to screw some people up. Because again, in Joel's mindset, I'm like, they're not getting away with this. Right. Granted, in the game, I do try my best to sneak past all these people. And it's really hard. Yeah. But I was really mad because I was like, why are you giving him such an inaccurate gun and such an unreliable gun? There's arguments about this online. Don't worry. I'm not even going to get too far into this. But then he does he just switched guns later. And so then I was super happy because he finally has a more accurate weapon.
I was just like, yeah, this is the one that I wanted you to have. It was just a really weird decision because, well, we don't get the flamethrower, unfortunately. If you play the game and you see like the progression of guns, like this was a very big moment, you know? And like to give him the one that's not even in the game and then he finally gets it, I guess makes sense. But when will we get the flamethrower, Shannon?
Season 2.
Because that's what we need. The flamethrower. We need a bloater and we need a flamethrower. Stay tuned, I guess. Shannon, I asked you this question earlier. You don't seem to recall, but in the game, when you get into that operating room and you encounter the doctor, you're still in control of Joel. There's no cutscene. The doctor looks at you. You have the gun in your hand, and he's doing his thing. And I did not know what to do when I first got here. And I was like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be a cutscene? Am I going to see something? Do I just go or whatever?
Right.
And then he grabs that scalpel and he's like, I'm not letting you take her or whatever. And I was like, oh shoot, no, I'm not letting you. And I shot him.
Right.
You know, I believe in the game, you can let that play out in different ways. I more or less kind of happens here. I found it interesting that if you do it as a scene or a cut scene, that this is how they would decide to do it, that Joel would barely even look at the guy and just like shoot. As soon as he picks up that scalpel, he doesn't even make a step towards him. He just like, he's already shot him in the head.
Right.
I think I struggled with that decision a little bit more than Joel, interestingly. And I don't know if you recall like how that moment played out for you whenever you were playing.
Yeah, not as exciting as you because I knew.
You knew
and
I
had watched,
saw me play it.
I watched you play the first game and the second game, so I knew that there was like just an inevitable chain of events that had to happen. But a big indicator for me is always like the little what's called, where you can see like that you have your gun and the amount of ammo you have in the corner.
Yeah,
like that. I remember walking into the door and that popping up again, and it's like, oh yeah, because I have to kill you.
Yeah.
So it was like an in-game reminder of like, yeah, death comes here for me.
Yeah. That would have been interesting if they had decided that's when he uses the knife, you know? But I'm not even going to get into that. But anyway, that might also be like I think, again, just to me, that was just very interesting because that was the one moment before I was like, I'll kill everyone. But then I got to this room. I was like, you guys are not a threat.
Right.
You could be fine. But like I had to make the decision to do that, you know?
Like you, Mattias.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that doctor dies one way or another, whether you pull the trigger or not. Some people just kind of go in guns blazing or whatever. But to me, that was just a really interesting moment how they decided to do it versus like how I was like, okay, now I have a choice.
Yeah.
In this,
what do I choose?
This is what happens. Yeah. He lets the other two nurses live. He takes Ellie. We have the scenes. We've been talking a lot about Marlene already and Joel and their discussions and everything. Is there absolutely anything more that you want to say about that kind of stuff? It plays out more or less the same as it did in the game. Again, the decisions are there. We see the argument. We see how like Marlene is right. Joel is right.
Yeah.
It's not as easy and clear cut.
Right.
You know? He is taking a certain amount of agency also away from Ellie, the same person that he said, you know what, you deserve a choice mere episodes ago, you know? And now he's like, I don't
Never mind.
care.
Well, that's circles back to what I was saying earlier of like, even really pure love can be selfish. And I wanted to ask this of you when we find out that Joel says, you would just come after her.
Absolutely.
Do you think...
Yes.
Wait, you don't know what I'm going to ask. Do you think that Joel is more afraid that she's going to come after Ellie and Ellie's going to die? Or is he afraid for himself that Marlene's going to come and Ellie's going to die? And he's going to lose her?
I don't understand the difference between those. So the difference is that he's just afraid for Ellie dying, and the difference is that
he's afraid of losing Ellie.
I mean, yeah.
Both.
I mean, yeah, why is he doing this, right? This kind of he's finally found his purpose. We go back to the Bill and Frank episode when Bill says, "You are my purpose. I was never afraid until you came along." And this is how this is basically Joel solidifying the exact same thing. If he is like Bill, this is why that episode existed, to show us the parallel of like what lengths Joel would go to.
Yeah.
This is his purpose now. If he doesn't have Ellie, what's the point? You know, he spent 20 years already being this person he doesn't know, kind of going through life, almost like a zombie himself, you know? And Ellie comes along and has changed everything. It's helped heal his broken heart. It's helped give him the closure that he needed. It's helped finally reconcile everything that he was been struggling with the past 20 years, and to finally not have that thought, you know, that he was a failure. It's Ellie, you know, this, and that's why she's also like kind of more important as a character than actually Joel is, you know, even though he is our main character in the show and in the game at this point, she is the more important character because to him, like, that she means everything. So yeah, he knows that if anyone alive knows about Ellie and knows that she can be cured, because I don't think he knows that this information is not out there. They're not going around and spreading the news like, everyone, we're gonna get a cure, you know.
Right.
Marlene didn't even know Ellie was alive until that morning, right? And now that he knows that Marlene knows what's happening and she's going to come after Ellie, she's going to do anything in her power to continue on her journey, because that means more to her than anything else. So yeah, he doesn't want to lose Ellie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the whole thing, that this is the period on the sentence that is, you are my purpose, and also you're gonna come after her, and boom, like So for sure. Did you have a different answer?
No, my question was more just trying to decide if we thought Joel was acting completely out of selflessness or if he was thinking about his own emotional well-being as well. And I think you solidified it there.
There
It's
is
like,
something too about how much we have to go back to the first episode, right? The very first episode, the last time he was carrying a girl and was confronted with someone pointing a gun at him and having to like defend his position. The last time this happened, he lost his daughter. And essentially she lost her future. And we've talked about that. We've talked about who she could have been and how different she is from Ellie. They talk about it, right? It's selfish in a way, but it's selfless because he's not thinking about not just about him. He is also thinking about Ellie's future. He's thinking about she deserves a future. He's come to know her. He's come to grow with her. And he wants to give her the thing that he couldn't give his daughter. You know, he couldn't give Sarah a future. He failed to do that. And there is a bit of selflessness to be able to say that she deserves a future, even if she could be the one to save the rest of humanity. That is the thing that I feel like is the struggle at the end of the episode, moving on to future seasons. Ellie is also, I think, going to be torn with that. You know, like, did I deserve this? I did have a purpose, you know, but you took away my purpose. But also, like, does she not deserve, you know, to have her, to forge her own life, to not have this like forced down her, you know? Granted, she didn't choose to get bitten or whatever either, but that also gave her, like we know, this kind of sort of purpose. But like, he's thinking about, this is a girl that wants to go with me to like a sheep farm or the moon or whatever. Like, she deserves that.
And so do I.
You know, I don't even know if, at that point, if it really matters what he thinks he deserves. I think he also believes, like, I've just done some horrible things, and he knows it. He is ready and resigned to that fact, and he I don't think he cares about what he deserves. I think he knows that she deserves it. I don't think it's about that at all.
So you don't think that he's acting from a place of a little bit of selfishness as well?
The selfishness is, again, like that she is his purpose, but not that like he deserves it. I think those are two different things,
Mhm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
that he couldn't live if she wasn't around
Mm-hmm.
in that sense. You know, he couldn't move on with a life knowing that she was no longer in it,
Mm-hmm.
and that he wouldn't, you know, he would go back to he'd go back to wherever he was in the mindset, you know, and that he can't handle it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to say these are like suicidal thoughts.
Right.
I just want to say like in essence his life.
Yeah, of
And
course.
like in metaphorically, you know, like it can't go on. This is something he never expected but this is also something that he feels like is his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate one way or another someone's losing their purpose
Mm-hmm.
in their own mind, right? And he would so that selfishness comes from him taking that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
of continuing to be that protector role, but to give her something else.
Yeah.
And he does believe, again, as he goes on, he justifies it later. He's like, you find something new.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you will find something new. That's the whole point. Like we go on, this is not your fault. And he's found that you find something new. She's not listening to him.
Mm-hmm. That's because like Joel doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his fault. Like he thinks he gets it. He thinks he really like gets it, but he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand like what losing that means to Ellie specifically.
And why don't you tell? What do you think that is?
What do I think? What is?
What is she losing? What does that mean to her? Yeah,
That she's losing her purpose in life, like we were just talking about, but also the like almost debt I feel like she owes to people who have gotten her to that point, and the people that she has really cared about and then lost. Her biggest wound is like that abandonment wound that everyone she's ever really loved has either left her or has been killed. And I think there's a part of her that's like, and I can help fix this by like maybe I wouldn't have experienced so much loss if only. And then that just adds like different layers of like guilt and responsibility to that desire.
yeah.
And Joel, I think, is seeing this as like, hey man, I know you're going, like, I know it's a hard thing. You're 14, you're going to be okay. You have your life ahead of you. You got like me, I'm here to help and love and support you. Like, we're going to move through this. And I don't think he realizes what a fundamental piece of her knowing that she had a cure was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not his fault. I don't think he's not being empathetic or anything. He's just not quite getting how important that is.
Right. She's visibly angry,
Mm-hmm.
I think, at the end, you know, when he's kind of not listening to her. You know, he kind of interrupts her and she's mad that she's trying to say something.
Yeah, and he doesn't
doesn't
even
wanna
let her
say
finish.
something.
He's like, no, I got you. I understand. This is it.
Well, I think he's scared.
Yeah, of course.
He's scared of what she has to say, and he's trying to save it before it happens, like as usual.
Mhm.
But he can't get away from it, you know? And
Yeah.
then we get this famous exchange, though shot from a different 180, if you understand the 180 rule. Every scene for the adaptation from the game to the show, I just want to mention, is the exact same scene except taken place on a different side
Funny.
of their face. That's the change they made.
That's the change.
I've noticed like almost every scene is that way. But yeah, beat for beat, swear to me, swear that everything you told me about the Fireflies is true. And he says, I swear. Okay. They had not a huge argument, but they had kind of a different argument about what that okay meant on the official podcast, you know, from the different perspectives and what it could mean. I'm curious, maybe here in the show or maybe both in the game, like what you thought that okay was.
That okay for me was accepting that the person you love wants you to think this.
Mm-hmm. So
And
she was like accepting the lie as truth because it meant so much to him.
she was accepting what he was saying because that was the easiest way forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's you don't have to stop and try to unpack what all of that means to you individually and together now as a pairing of what you making this choice did to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, yeah, just in her current mindset, it is easier to just say, okay.
Yeah. I find it very interesting that Ashley Johnson, who originated Ellie and arguably had to do the most prep to like break down the script and break down what do these lines mean, how am I going to perform this, that she believed that okay meant great, we're done. Which is heartbreaking because I don't think that really crossed my mind, but to imagine that this whole thing, what Joel just did, the decision that he made was the breaking point. The fact that he had to lie and she knew that he was lying and that she knew that if he was going to lie about this, that it was over for her. So heartbreaking because the thing that he is fighting for this whole time is the thing that like
he just broke,
screwed him up, you know? But what were you supposed to do? You know, how do you deal with that? You know?
Yeah.
So heartbreaking. I don't know. I will accept that. I can accept that answer coming from the original actress.
Hell yeah.
And I think that can be very true on Bella's face, like the anger that she's there and the way that she says it. I was like, I can see that interpretation. My interpretation, I think, is more so that the first time I saw it in the game, I don't know what I thought. It was such a weird... it didn't feel as ambiguous as most people thought. I thought she just accepted it. I thought she accepted the lie and she believed it as truth to me in the video game, and that she was going to live with that. She would never think about it again because she didn't want to. You know, she didn't want to go and think about all the possibilities of what could have happened or what did happen. Here, I do think it is something about Bella's face tells me that like she is not as accepting of that something significant has broken in their kind of relationship. Maybe it's just me because I don't want to feel that they are not going to get along or that she would end the relationship. I think she's going to go on and move forward and kind of, again, forget about it. So I think there's a little bit of acceptance there, but she knows it's a lie. And fundamentally, as we mentioned, without that purpose and without ever really knowing, she is something about that relationship is missing. You know, there's a broken thread there.
What do you think the more critical hit is? Or I guess I should say the bigger sin to come back from for Joel. Is it the fact that he took the choice away from her to fulfill her purpose? Or do you think it's the fact that he then lied about it?
Repeat again.
What do you think the more damaging thing to Ellie is? Do you think it's the fact that Joel took her choice away from her to fulfill her purpose? Or is it that he then lied about doing it?
I think we get into territory of like the future because when they discuss this later on, you know, that kind of like keeps coming up, right? I think it's just the recognition that I think it's the lie. I think it's the lie is more damaging. You know, I think earlier in the episode she said, "I'll follow you wherever you go." You know, there's no halfway with this, and he's essentially going halfway with it. He's doing it, but not accepting. He's refusing to tell her. And there's clear reason why, you know, she would be mad. She would want to go back. She would want to figure it out, you know, all those kind of things. But I do think by essentially lying and swearing to her, the one thing that means more to her is like, because she could, if he would have just gone all the way and just told her the truth, I think that would have maybe I think that would have mattered more to her.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think as Ellie like grew up, not just literally aged, I think there's a way that you can empathize with Joel, even if you don't agree with his choice of why maybe he would be put in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's a forgiveness. I agree with you. That's a lot easier to imagine bouncing back from. But it's like, not only did you do that, which I don't like and makes me uncomfortable in a few different ways, you also lied to me once. And then when I tried to ask you for clarity, to give you that chance to really tell me what was going on, you chose to lie to me again. You chose to keep me in the dark. And I feel like Ellie maybe thinks that speaks something about their relationship and how Joel's going to see her. And that like he's the one that is going to make these choices and not be able to come clean about them. And I think Ellie is always just so like blunt and straightforward with everything. I think that honesty is probably a very important trait to her and other people. And the fact that the person that you love very much and that you've gotten closest to now can like just turn around and lie to you. It's like, oh, that's an interesting character trait to see.
It's really nuanced. And I think we'll talk about that more on the second season of The Last of Us. Which they have confirmed, and Bella will be returning, and so will Pedro Pascal, and that's all we'll say about that. So
and that's that.
Ooh, yeah. Was there absolutely anything else? I'm sorry about this episode that was important to discuss before we move on to our spoiler section and our anticipation for the next episode.
Oh, I think we basically touched
next season.
Next season, yeah. I think we basically touched on everything. I do like in the car, he's really trying to give her any answer that would stop her from trying to go back out. That's like, he tells her that, oh, there's dozens of other subjects. Like, they stopped looking for a cure completely. Doesn't really answer about Marlene. Like, he's not trying to leave any loose thread for Ellie to pick at. He thinks that he's crossing all of his T's, but really he's like digging himself a hole just deeper and deeper with her. So I liked the different tactics that he was trying to use to ingratiate like that story to Ellie through different like means.
Sure.
And I also had interesting feelings about the fact that, you know, while this man is basically skipping to Wyoming to see his brother, like he wants to talk about Sarah and how Ellie really would have liked Sarah because Ellie's funny and Ellie would have really liked Sarah and Sarah would have really liked her. And again, total flashlight on Joel's like, I'm ready to go be a family with like this community and this girl. And, you know, I almost feel like in a way he thinks that things are starting to look up for him in some capacity. And the fact that Ellie is just there. She's like, oh yeah, I bet I would.
I mean, she lost everything, right? She
I know.
lost.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So to see the energy percolating in Joel as they get closer and closer, as Ellie gets further and further, like watching that dynamic happen again. So similar to the fucking initial dynamic we had.
It's very interesting. You say he's like digging a hole. It's just that like it just doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense to her because again, like her whole purpose the past year has been like this, you know, and she's like, this couldn't have meant nothing, you know, finally after like being born the orphan and kind of being like having this thrust upon her, this role that she can finally do something for a change, you know, and then have it pulled away from her. And it is interesting. And again, I think we'll talk about maybe more in the future, just the idea that he's not exactly skipping, but it is for him, there's a big changeover. All happens in that giraffe scene. The moment he finds his purpose and something that he could give him new life, and the thing that he may have been searching for the past years is the exact same time that she loses her purpose and everything. Like that they both can't have it at the same exact time.
Fuck this game. God.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert, if you're around and you have no know-how of The Last of Us Part 2, the video game, or the upcoming seasons, you should bow out now.
Yep.
There's definitely a lot of things to talk about. Yeah, so jump back in if you're listening to the podcast, and it's a time code where we will do a conclusion and wrap up. But if you are afraid of spoilers in The Last of Us 2, exit
Run.
now. Because there's a lot. Yeah, Shannon, here's something that we can't avoid talking about because the theories are all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Abby in the hallway of the hospital?
I kind of hope not. It kind of looked like a guy with a backpack to me. I know we're really trying to push that as a braid, but it really looks like the strap of a backpack. Also, another reason I don't want it to be Abby is because Abby's not exponentially older than Ellie when we meet her. So for her to be...
She is. I think. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong.
So I don't know. For her to be Abby-sized now when Ellie's 14 versus Abby-sized, I guess, like 5 years from now. Like, I don't know. Abby just didn't seem that old to me. And that the build of the person running away looks like a full-grown, like, adult person.
I think there's a, yeah.
So
that person
I would
looks
be cool
a little older or whatever, but
Yeah.
I think, the fact that like Abby is in the game a bigger, older person, you know what I'm saying? Like I think that's just kind of like alluding to the fact. I think the great thing about it is that whether or not it is or isn't Abby is that it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it is Abby, and I think that's great that it is just a shadow, and it gives us enough to like give us a little bit to kind of like hold on to or whatever, that little Easter egg or whatever, and then but it's also not in your face, kind of thing, So I think that's what's great about it. It's like, and it could not be, if you don't want it to be, it doesn't need to be, but I do think it was Abby.
Yeah.
So yeah, you heard it here last, I guess. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say in the game, Abby's supposed to be 22, so they should be.
She's about 3 years older.
Yeah,
so that's what I'm saying. Like she has hit her growth spurt by this point.
Yeah, So she would be. Yeah, she'd be like 17ish.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think I am disappointed that the doctor clearly wasn't played by Derek Phillips, who is the guy who was the original, I guess, at least facial and voice actor for the doctor in the second game.
Oh.
He plays Billy Riggins in Friday Night Lights, which is where I love him from. And so I was so happy to see him in the second game. And of course, we don't know in the first game or even in the first show how important this doctor is. But I felt like, even if he is covered in a mask or whatever, and we don't see his face, and he's not supposed to be that important. And I loved the change up in the second game to make him like, that this decision means something, even if, again, to me, like it was always going to end one way, but like that I pulled that trigger, that I had to make that decision, That's why it was also important to me, like in the game, but I didn't know it. But that's why it impacted me when I found out in the second game what that importance was, because I did that and I didn't know it could play out differently. And I was like, no, but I did it,
Right.
So the fact that they kind of dispatch him so quickly is also kind of like, okay, we're not going to bring any attention to it. I think that means something, right? But again, the fact that it's not Derek Phillips, kind of annoying, because I was like, they could have brought him back. They could have a scene with him and Marlene, but I can understand why, because you don't want to allude to it, because it was never the point of the first game, never a point of the first show. But yeah, so we do know that everyone is coming back, obviously. Bella will be reprising their role, and that is, I don't think we ever really cared.
No.
She was 17 so they were 17 when they shot this. They're 19 now. They'll probably be 20, maybe 21 by the time they shoot. Which is older than Ellie is in the game.
Yeah.
I believe Ellie is 19. Yeah. In the second game. So can't wait to see how Bella Ramsey grows into this role, and the fact that she's coming back, super excited.
Mhm.
We never had any doubts, so
No.
I think that's great. I don't want to do any like fan castings or anything. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Tommy's role. Oh, we do know that like the season is going to be split, so it's not going to be a whole. It's not. This has been first game, one season. Second game is going to be possibly split into 2 seasons. My theory is that the first half will be about Bethany, and then the second half will be about Abby and Ellie. What do you think?
I'm going to throw you off a cliff. I was like, oh, did this dumbass mean Abby? And then I was like, no, this dumbass is still talking about Bethany.
That's an inside joke. So we're going to get some like half and half thing. I can't imagine. I don't know where they're going to split this up or whatever, but I'm glad we're getting multiple seasons.
Yeah.
I hope we get more infected. I hear that's
confirmed.
Mostly because, again, the infected do play a good role.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we can't forget that this threat is out there. And that, to me, was always a part of the game where it's like, they're still there.
Yeah, there's more.
Like, as soon as I'm done with the humans, then I have to deal with infected. As soon as I'm done with the infected, it's now the humans. Like, which one do I hate
run
more?
into?
You know? So, yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about in terms of like season 2 that you're hoping to look forward to or whatever that you're anticipating?
And we're like spoiling.
You can spoil whatever you want at this point.
I'm very excited to see Pedro and Bella tackle Joel's death. That's
man.
100%. Also, I'm apprehensive about who they cast to play Abby because I'm someone that came into the games much like later, I guess. And also, I love the second game, and apparently not everybody shares that opinion. Just knowing that the actor who played Abby in the game got so much hate and like bullshit. I hope that people still aren't that shitty, and they're not going to do that to whoever they cast to play like the HBO version.
Well,
of
Laura
Abby.
Bailey played. No one got hate. None of the actors got hate.
Laura Bailey got hate.
Oh wait, no, she did.
Yes,
Actually,
she
you're
did.
right. I forgot. I'm just because there's a. You're right. I take that back. I was thinking about something else. The fact that Laura Bailey did the voice, and then there was a facial, a person who worked on the game who was like the face of. So there's no like 1-to-1 ratio of like who this.
Yeah.
There's no Abby.
There's 3 actors
like,
that play Abby, but I'm sorry. I'm referring to the actor who voiced Abby.
Yeah.
Laura Bailey. And received like death threats and hate mail.
Yeah.
Because of Abby. And I love Abby. I remember switching when watching you play.
Oh, you hated Abby.
Watching you play, having to switch into Abby after what we just go through with her and Ellie was infuriating. I wanted to like put the controller down, and then you play as Abby.
That's why, to me, this is going to be, I think this adaptation is going to be harder because I don't feel like this is the best piece of content about empathy that you could have in any medium, and to do it in a video game format in the way that you switch and you have to control the character that you've been fighting to get to for half the game, and now you're controlling her, and now you're on her side. It's such an interesting thing, and you don't get that in any other medium.
Right.
It's gonna be so hard to adapt. I don't know how they're gonna be able to do that,
because they have to keep Abby ingratiated to us essentially every episode, because we already love Bella Ramsey's Ellie.
Yeah.
And if we're not getting constant, I almost said Bethany. If we're not getting like near constant Abby attention, it's like, how do you build that connection with her in a way that is just as impactful as it is in the game? And I think that's going to be a big feat for them to tackle.
Yeah.
I feel like they could probably do it. I just don't know how they're going to do it. And I hope it happens.
Oh, it's definitely possible. I mean, this is by far, let's talk about a little bit, or we could talk about it later after spoilers. I mean, in terms of like how they did the show as a whole, this is still by far, despite the grievances that we had with the past 2 episodes, by far the best adaptation.
Phenomenal.
And the best way of telling the story that they could have done.
Yeah.
You know? HBO took a risk, and I think now that they've seen that they have like the biggest show on their hands, like the next 2 seasons are going to be even bigger.
Yeah.
And because there's some seams to cover up in terms of like the CGI and things like that. And I hopefully that budget gets better. And the fact that everyone's so passionate that's coming in and making this, I don't doubt that they're going to do it justice. And I also don't think that Craig Mazin or Neil Druckmann, they're not the kind of writers or showrunners to come in and rush anything out. If Craig Mazin doesn't have scripts, they're not shooting a single thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I'm going to come with the story. We're going to take our time. If it has to take him 2 more years, they'll do it. And I think he'll convince HBO to do that. So I think there's no doubt to me in my mind. Other people I'm looking forward to seeing, they haven't announced any other casting yet.
Right.
Which is to be safe because we got to have some scripts.
Yeah.
I am curious. Ian Alexander is one of my favorites from the game. They played Lev. I'm sorry.
Lev.
And I actually don't know what their pronouns are, but I'll use they because I believe
Lev.
they transitioned from one to another.
Also.
No, the actual actor.
Yeah, I know.
So Ian, whether he has a cameo or gets to actually play Lev again would be so exciting, but don't know if they're older or too old at this point. They still look young, so maybe they could still, I don't know, just the same way that Bella does. And again, another storyline that I think gets overlooked a lot because of the hatred for Abby and like the controversy around those kinds of things. But yeah, we get so many good new characters, you know, Jesse, you know, maybe I can play Jesse. Who knows? We just need an Asian guy, right? I can do that. Can I? Don't you think? Okay, maybe not. And Dina, you know, Shannon Woodward, great actress. Loved her in Westworld. I'm so excited to see her play the voice actress. She's not going to come back and play Dina, but I am excited to see if she'll get a cameo or whatever and see if they'll be able to kind of, again, give other roles to different people, especially who have played these characters and brought them to life. The fact that they've given Troy like a decent spot, you know, arguably Ashley has the better role, you know, in terms of that, you know, and how do you have that full circle moment? Like, I don't know, but the amount of things, the show has only scratched the surface of what is like possible. And I'm so excited to see whoever they cast or all this. I can't wait to see these stories play out. So excited. But yeah, I don't know we could talk about more about that in like maybe a spoiler discussion, maybe a bonus episode or something. We can talk more about things.
Yeah.
You know?
Cause the second game is absolutely my favorite. And I think about it a lot. So potato.
I don't think after you've played it, you couldn't even play or talk about the show or do anything without bringing in everything that happens in the game, including not, and most importantly, Joel's death. Because I feel like you kept it. We always have in the back of our mind, he's not gonna be around.
He's not around, yeah.
Don't be mad at Joel, Ellie. He's not gonna be there forever. Don't do that. Don't. Oh man, I can't wait to see how they do the museum scene. Which I know you're replaying the game and you just got through it. That is like, there's so many good moments that we still have with Pedro. You know, that we're still gonna have. And to see that brought to life. And then Gabriel Luna. Can't wait to see more of our good old boy Tommy.
Yeah, I'm excited about
that. So again,
that.
Some of my favorite moments come from that game. It's such a good. This is why Naughty Dog is so great. And screw the haters.
Yeah,
you know,
fuck them.
Speaking of fuck them, are we ready to talk about our final fuck counter?
Tell me.
Of the season. It's low, Shannon.
Okay.
It's low, unfortunately. But as we said, it's a 45-minute episode and Ellie's not in it or she's knocked out for majority of it.
She's out.
So we get a good, humble 3 fucks out of her. That said, because the original Ellie was playing in this show as Ellie's mother, I'll give 2 honorary fucks. bringing our total up to $5.
$5 for the last episode.
For the final episode. I feel so crass. I don't know if I can do a fuck counter next year.
We're doing the fuck
trying
counter.
to figure out, do I censor this? Do I not? What do I do? We're just fuck all over. I don't know. It's so, yeah. Yeah. How do you feel? It's not quite our 34 that we got with Ellie and
That was amazing.
Ellie and Riley, but here
that episode was so good. Just
Sure.
in multiple ways. That is one of the like shining episodes for me looking back at this
Do
season.
you have a favorite episode of the season? Would it be that one?
Can I give you my top 3? Because I don't like to make a choice.
Yes, sure.
Thank
Why
you.
not? Yeah.
All
just
right.
Break the rules.
Yep, I'm breaking the rules. It's my podcast. I make the rules. So here's a sensible 3, and for some different reasons. Episode 1, because it gets you into the world, and it ingratiates you immediately. I think first episodes are really important, and a lot of the time I tell people like, oh, you gotta watch like probably the first 3 before you get into it. The Last of Us, episode 1, you're fucking there. So that gets a gold star. Obviously, episode 3, who did not love crying over Bill and Frank? So I liked all the emotions that brought out in me. But my favorite episode, yes, is the episode with Riley, as I knew it would be, because pain and adorable and mouth kisses and
Yeah. I think my favorite has to be 6 in Jackson. You know,
oh yeah,
that was like, you know, things coming together. I love seeing all the characters. There are some strong episodes for sure, as we've mentioned. But 6, I think, made me like the most emotional out of everything. I mean, obviously I cried with Bill and
Henry
Frank, but
also.
Henry, but like, yeah, but I don't think I cried as much as during episode 6, you know? Did I just say, yeah, episode 6. And I do think, unfortunately, episode 4 is such a weak link. I wish we had just not, as much as I liked Melanie Linsky and Kathleen and that whole storyline and getting to see Jeffrey Pierce, and a bloater, you know, like those 2 episodes, like if it had focused more on Henry and Sam, I would have enjoyed episode 4.
yeah.
But the fact that at the end of the day, like we chose to have a second episode there and not a second episode with David, and we could have fleshed out these like last few episodes a little bit more.
Yeah.
Especially when we knew we weren't going to get like a 2-episode pilot, you know, kind of thing. I think it's hard because, again, originally we did have 10 episodes. Maybe there wasn't a whole outline. And then when they got in the editing room, that's when they combined the first episode. So it makes sense that they couldn't go back and shoot more if they had known.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's the only thing in terms of like weak links. But other than that, such a strong season as a whole. Such a great adaptation. The fact that people are experiencing this almost for the first time. It's been a whole decade. I mean, I didn't experience it until after the pandemic myself, you know? So I was kind of new to the train, even though I was a big fan of Naughty Dog and Uncharted and everything that they've done. But I loved being able to play the first game and the second game almost back to back for the first time ever. And so to me, like being immersed into that world for like a good 6 months, because like, you know, between the games coming out, right? That was all I could talk about that year. And the fact that people are discovering it now, so amazing that we could do this. The fact that it wasn't the fireball that was Uncharted with Tom Holland, because that was a terrible movie.
So bad. That
Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, 2 people I will follow anywhere they go, just like Ellie will follow Joel until they decide to take my purpose away from me. In that case, who knows? Yeah, don't forget you're on Discord there.
I'm not.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say before we wrap things up? Oh, thank you guys so much for joining us, whether you're here live, whether you're listening to this podcast later on. This has been such a journey. We chose a hard thing to start our podcasting journey. And it was hard because we had to find our own footing along the way, and we are still finding our own footing. And hopefully we don't even know if what we can talk about now, because The Last of Us has been such a big part of like our identities, and we know it's been a big part of so many of your identities, and the reason why you're here and you love talking to us and listening to us talk about it and engaging with us. We wouldn't have continued this if it wasn't for everyone that just also enjoyed being
Along
a part of
for the
this.
ride.
And I love that. And hopefully you continue being a part of this journey. Shannon, we talked about, we're going to talk about Yellow Jackets later. We're going to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once next week. If you guys, hopefully you will all stick around and be with us on that journey as well. Our recording times are more or less going to be the same during Yellow Jackets because that was also on Sunday night. So we don't have to change too much, which is great. I don't know when we'll do Everything Everywhere All at Once, but who knows? If you want more of The Last of Us talk, I don't know what else more we can say until season 2. But if you're just hankering, if you just want to hear us talk about The Last of Us, I will say right now, you can convince me to do a bonus audio only episode. We'll do a bonus episode where we talk to you guys, answer your questions, talk about the things we missed. If you email us at codependentcontent@gmail.com, we want those emails. I want you to convince us.
Gimme.
Sure, you can comment on TikTok or do whatever, but I'd rather see those emails and then just keep engaging with us. Also, join the Discord and bother me on there. We do record this live on Discord, and we'd love to have more people to just chat with and send memes and stuff to, and GIFs, because it's just about a handful of us, and I'd like more. But that said, if you just are curious about what we're going to be doing or where you can find us, you can follow our socials. There's a whole links in our descriptions below or in the podcast descriptions. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, wherever it may be. Again, you can email us. You can join the Discord. You can watch all of this on YouTube. Please subscribe. The best way we can keep delivering things to you is if you go to Spotify or YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, and it's all there. So please do that. Even though we do have a plan, like I do want to know that like people are still going to want to be with us on the journey wherever we go next. Just like Ellie is following Joel. Anything you want to say to anyone before we sign off on this last episode?
Thanks, guys. It's been a ride. Hope you cried as much as I did.
Okay. See you on the next content journey.